Hi, our next speaker is Balaji Sowrirajan. He's the Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Samsung Semiconductors India R&D. And his talk is going to be titled on IoT and the role of platforms. It seems like yesterday was all about AI and cognitive learning. Today it's all about platforms, right? So welcome, Balaji. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the role of platforms in IoT. So why are we talking about platforms? So to illustrate that point, let's first, what is IoT, or let's define what is IoT. The most common interpretation or definition of an IoT implementation is, let's take any equipment and you connect it to the internet and access it from the internet. Right? Let's take an example of an air conditioner, right? So let me put a connectivity like a Wi-Fi or a cellular connectivity on it, and through that I can actually switch it on, switch it off, set the temperature, or better still, I can have an IFTTT trigger through which when I reach a particular location, I can turn on the AC so that when I go home, the home is all set with the right temperature. But actually what you're talking about here is not IoT, right? This is maybe a glorified remote control which is accessed from internet, right? So IoT is far more complex, and it needs a very structured or a platform approach to solve the problem. So what do we mean by this, right? Let's start with some brass tacks in terms of what is the future of IoT. I think the speakers before me, I'm sure, would have spoken about the market potential. IoT is going to touch virtually every market, be it automobile, we saw the GM example, or smart cities, or smart homes, retail, logistics, medical, you name it, right? IoT is going to touch every single market, and it is expected to be around a $11 trillion kind of a revenue by 2025. Let's zoom in, right? I mean, 2025 is far out. What is the immediate potential in the next 3 years, what you're talking about? In 2020, IoT is expected to be a $1 trillion market opportunity. If I have to look at what will be the driving factors from a $1 trillion market opportunities, we are talking about smart homes, we are talking about smart office buildings, smart cities, health, transport, and these are going to be a big drivers as far as the market is concerned. So why do I have to IoTize a product? If I am a car manufacturer or if I am a consumer appliance manufacturer, what is the big benefit for me to IoTize a product, right? So there are two views to it from the benefits of IoT. One is the manufacturer point of view, and other is the user point of view, right? So if you look at it from a manufacturer point of view, it brings in critical insight from a user behavior, which is going to help me in terms of product management. So if I have to illustrate it more, I can look at the way the end consumer is using the product. Maybe I'm over-engineering my product, let's get rid of some of the functionalities. Or maybe I'm missing something, or there's an oversight, and let me add certain functionalities which will make the user experience better, so which will help me maintain my market leadership. It's not just this. If I have to extend this from a manufacturer's point of view, this is also going to help me look at additional services I can provide. For instance, even selling an AC is a good idea, or should I start leasing the AC and extend into adjacent markets and bring in more revenue and increase my market share? So this data, what you're going to get in from a customer point of view or customer usage point of view, can change your entire PLM and the product management perspective for the company which is putting the IoT in its product. The second aspect is from an end user point of view. Now, as an end user, the manufacturer is going to add a lot of IoT components, which is going to help him increase his market penetration, which is going to help him increase his revenue. But why should I pay for it if I'm buying an AC, for instance, right? So the intent of IoT from an end user point of view is to give more convenience and better user experience. So what you're talking about, let's take the same the air conditioner example, the air conditioning or the AC manufacturer can tie up with weather.com. So we heard in the previous talk how they have acquired the weather companies through which they get a lot of data and do value-added services. So even from an AC point of view, based on the weather.com data, the AC can have the intelligence to set the right temperature and most importantly, cut down your power bill. So there is a very, very compelling argument both from the manufacturer point of view to IoTize a product and also from the end user point of view to improve or to give a better user experience, right? So what does it take to build an IoT-based system? We said it's extremely complex and it's not a smart remote, right? So the first or the most important component of an IoT-based system is the sensors. Sensors play a very, very important role where we collect the data and in cloud and we do a lot of processing. So is IoT all about putting the sensor in the cloud and looking at the data? Definitely not. IoT is much more than sensors, right? So IoT is a very, very complex system with many parts integrated into it. Starting at the base is the silicon, which actually powers the IoT modules. On top of that, you're going to have the operating systems, the drivers, the sensors integrated into it, and open source is a very, very key component for better adoption, SDKs, and security. On the top of it all, there is a very significant aspect with respect to the total cost of the solution. So let's zoom into few of these things. Obviously, this is too big a problem space we are talking about, and let's zoom into some of the key aspects and see what does it mean to us, right? So first thing is the total cost, right? The visible cost we can talk about is the module price, the IoT module price by itself, and the host processor cost, and the software development cost, and the cloud cost that goes into building the system. But this is not the only thing, right? There are a lot of invisible costs. Once an IoTized equipment is not something where we build the equipment, sell it, and forget it. This is the conventional model which exists today. Once you put an IoT in and start looking at the data that comes out of the system, there's a lot of aspects with respect to software porting, software integration and testing, and taking it to different platforms, and upgrading your software with latest kernels and operating systems, and there's a cloud development cost, and once you start collecting a lot of data, then comes the analytics part, right? So you would have to hire data scientists who has to figure out what does he do with the data and do the end application development and maintain it. So there is a huge invisible cost which significantly increases the total cost of ownership for the end equipment manufacturer, right? So to start with, it's an extremely complex system to build. It's not a simple IoT module addition to an equipment. And on top of that, there are significant components which actually increases the total cost of ownership. What is the next big barrier or next big complexity in terms of IoT? It is security, right? Once you are exposing a lot of data through the internet to process these data and take actions, you're also going to have a lot of hackers who are going to attack the system, take control of the data, steal critical information of users, and most importantly, they can disrupt the services. So if you're going to compromise on security, it is going to finish your company, right? So you would have been doing extremely well with your end equipment, but putting an IoT, you're exposing yourself to a whole host of security risks, which again brings in an additional complexity into the development of an IoTized equipment. Now, what is the next big problem as far as IoTizing your equipment? By adding complexity into the products, the project schedules are going to be pushed out, definitely, if you're not smart about managing it. A data indicates in 2015, only 34% of the projects, which IoT-related projects, were completed on time, right? And if I have to look at the slips, most of the projects slipped by more than 6 months. So this is going to significantly impact your time to market, right? So IoT is definitely a much complex problem than just putting a IoT module onto your equipment. So you have to figure out how to connect and manage your devices. You have to figure out how to grow the ecosystem if you have to sufficiently monetize your returns, right? So the speaker before me very, very elegantly spoke about the importance of ecosystem in the IoT world, right? And most importantly, once you put all these things together, you have to figure out how to improve the outcomes, right? Which means providing libraries, providing APIs and additional layers which can help you develop mobile apps and provide analytic services. So extremely complex problem we are talking about in terms of cost of ownership, in terms of security, in terms of time to market, and managing the ecosystem, right? So if I were an automobile manufacturer, or if I were a logistic or a retailer, or if I were a health or a medical system manager, this is not my core competency to worry about. And if each and every one of them have to solve this problem independently, it's going to cost a significant amount of money in terms of owning the solution, and it is going to cost significant amount of development cycle time to put the solution in place. So what do we do? So what is the solution, right? So the solution is we need a complete IoT platform or a solution which can provide an end-to-end solution right from end nodes or modules, as we call it, to gateways, to cloud solutions, and app. This is what an IoT solution provider should give to the end equipment manufacturer so that an automobile company or a health solutions provider need not worry about all these aspects, right? All they have to worry about is how do they take this end-to-end integrated platform and can provide sufficient differentiation through these platforms to their end customers. So this is what would be the key from an end customer point of view. So this is where Samsung's Arctic IoT platform comes into play. Samsung's Arctic IoT platform is a complete end-to-end IoT solution, right? It has modules, it has IoT cloud, it has security and ecosystem, everything taken care so that and someone who integrates the solution can start looking at doing the differentiation based on the solutions for their customers. So as I spoke about, it has a module, cloud, and analytics, and mobile apps enabled by libraries. Let's take a look at each and every one of them in detail, right? So let's start with Arctic modules. So Arctic modules are actually powered by scalable hardware. So we all know a one-size-fits-all doesn't work in many of these solution space. Even in mobile, we are talking about a low-tier modap or a mid-tier or a high-tier application processor solutions. So definitely a one-size-fits-all doesn't work in mobile, and it's certainly not going to work in an IoT kind of a platform where the need is you would have an IoT embedded in a light, or it can be a much more complex application where you need an IoT module integrated to it. So you need a scalable hardware to start with, right? And this is where Arctic module has a very wide portfolio of scalable modules which you can customize based on your end equipment needs. The second aspect is you need RF certified wireless connectivity, right? Because you can't go through the pain of getting your product certified for each and every application. So you need certifications and compliance certification, which is extremely important. And all Arctic modules are RF certified wireless connectivity solutions, right? The third important aspect is you need to have integrated and tested middleware. And the last aspect is, on top of this, you need to pack it with good APIs and SDK support. So Arctic module has all these things, which means once it's literally an out-of-the-box solution where you can take this and plug it in and start developing your applications with the SDK you have, which makes it very, very easy for an end application developer to integrate the modules into the system. The second aspect of any IoT is the cloud, right? So cloud is a very important component, but we all can say that, yeah, we have the cloud services. Why even Arctic Cloud? Why can't I go to other commercially available cloud? In an IoT space, a customized cloud from a IoT point of view is extremely important. Now, what do I mean by this, right? Firstly, to start with, if I have to start building my solutions based on the clouds, right, you need to have very, very easy to use API. And Arctic platform has an extremely user-friendly and ready-to-go API. In fact, we have a workshop today in the afternoon where you can try your hands on the Arctic IoT platform and see how easily you can connect to the cloud and access the data and control things, right? So the most important aspect of it is the API. The second aspect in any cloud or the data is the data, right? I mean, the amount of data that's going to be generated is going to be huge because you're going to have many, many, many devices connected to your cloud, and managing this large amount of data is going to be extremely tough, right? So it is going to be a nightmare if you don't normalize it. So this cloud platform has a data normalization and storage which is inbuilt into it, which makes your entire data management extremely simple, right? The third aspect is security. We spoke about how vulnerable, I mean, if you're not taking care of your security, how vulnerable your equipment and the data can be compromised. So it has an inbuilt security mechanism. And the other aspect is cross-devices rules engine. So this is multiple input and multiple output rules engine, which makes it extremely easy for people to write rules and manage the user experience. And the other important aspect of any IoT solutions, once you have a very wide deployment of IoT devices, the device management and specifically the OTA management becomes extremely complex. So the cloud provides a means for managing OTA through the cloud, so for a vast number of devices, which makes it extremely simple for you to control the updates and improve the user experience. And we also have multiple cloud and device connectors, which makes it very, very simple for a lot of third-party devices to be connected to the Arctic platform. So at the heart of the Arctic solution is the modules and the Arctic cloud. And we actually, on top of it, we have the Arctic premium services. We spoke about the example of weather.com, and I'm sure there are many, many more premium services which can improve the overall experience with respect to the usage of platform and the ecosystem as well, which we spoke about the importance of ecosystem, and Arctic has a very, very powerful ecosystem which is actually evolving continuously. So if you look at it, it's a pretty complete platform, and if I have to look at a more deeper view into the modules, so the module itself, we have two classes of modules. One, as we call it, as the edge nodes, which is basically a very simple chip and which has a bare metal RTOS running on it with device drivers and connectivity protocol stacks. And the other extreme is the gateways and hubs, where we have a full-blown Linux-based stack running, and which helps you customize the solution better, right? So this is the portfolio we have. So at the lowest end of the spectrum is the Arctic Zero, which actually has two variants, right? It is Cortex-M or Cortex-R CPU powered, and it can be a single or a dual CPU configuration and multiple protocol, I mean single or dual protocol radios. And at the mid end of the spectrum is the hubs and gateways, where we have a dual or an octa-core variants based on the performance and the processing needs, and it supports multiple protocol radios. And at the high end of the spectrum is, because some of these things, if you look at an IoT point of view, you might need complex imaging processing capability or signal processing capabilities or vision processing capabilities. So we have an octa-core based solution which actually takes care of special peripherals like DSP and VPU, which makes, again, the user experience a lot better to integrate this platform based on the needs. And also, how do I connect my device to the Arctic platform? So the platform offers many, many ways to communicate with the physical devices. It can be a simple coffee machine or an on-off switch we are talking about. So you can use WebSockets, you can use HTTPS or REST, or automobile can use MQTT or CoAP. So there are many, many ways to communicate. So again, the important aspect, if I have to look at it from a platform point of view, is for an end user, the complexity of connecting his devices should be completely abstracted out, and he should not be worried about what is the underlying hardware or the software stack. And so this entire thing is completely abstracted out, which makes the integration a very easy thing, right? So if I have to summarize, right, we saw the importance of the complexity of IoT and the importance of a platform approach to solve the IoT problem, right? And from the importance of platform, one important aspect is the security, which is built into this platform and taken care. And the other aspect is ease of bringing up a solution, which is where the API or very easy to use API comes up. The third aspect we spoke about on the platform front is end-to-end solution, which is where an integrated approach addresses this problem. And third, so we are not here just to sell the modules or the Arctic cloud, but there has to be means of connecting a third-party modules into the system, and that's where the interoperability comes in through APIs and SDKs, which we have. So at Samsung, we are very, very committed to the IoT revolution, and by providing an open platform like Arctic, which takes care of the security, the cost of building the solution, the total cost of ownership with respect to the solution, and the ease of developing the solutions and providing services through the ecosystem, we have a platform which can actually help jumpstart an equipment manufacturer onto the IoT, and not just jumpstart, actually he can focus on only the differentiated solutions aspect and not worry about the underlying hardware and the software architecture related challenge. So this is what we have, with a very special focus on the industry focus on these areas: a smart home, smart buildings, smart cities, and personal monitoring, which includes health, industrial, and smart lighting. The interesting aspect is those two buildings, which we are the smart building and the smart lighting we are talking about. The smart building is the Bay Area Samsung Research Center we have, which is completely powered using Arctic to be a smart building, right? So it's a time-tested solution in our own setup, which makes it speak about this entire platform with a lot of confidence amongst you, right? That's all I had, and thank you very much. And if there is any time for questions, we can take it. Thanks.
Thank you, Balaji. We have time for questions, but I had a quick clarification. So Arctic platform is the entire, from the hardware to the platform.
Right.
And what's the smart things piece?
The smart things is the additional platform that Samsung offers, right? So it's not a different solution. So we have both, which is addressing the IoT space. So one is the Arctic, where you can take the entire platform and integrate, and you have the cloud, everything. And smart things is the other solution which Samsung offers. So we have both.
So how do you, as a developer community out there,
so
how do they
the simple answer
choose?
I have is Arctic has the smart things connected to it. Okay. Right? So if you are going to take the smart things based solutions to build your end product, you can use the Arctic connector, the smart things connector into Arctic, and integrate the solutions to it.
Got it. Fantastic. Any other questions, please?
Balaji, you can answer my question to whatever abstract level you want to. So Samsung is such a highly respected company. And as an engineering community, right, we really feel bad about what happened with Note 7, right? So I really wish from breakdown you will go through to breakthrough. Whatever you can share of what happened. Whatever you can share, number one. Number two is in software. We are so used to, software crashed. So we as users, I can personally say I'm willing to accept a similar use case for hardware. Say, for example, I become too hot, I'm shutting down. If that was the use case, I'm sure we could have said $100 thing shut down, therefore I'm recalling, rather than blowing up. So I'm willing to accept that. Will that come as a sort of use case acceptable in the hardware down the line?
So if I have to, the first part is if I have to understand the Note 7, I think there are a lot of people working on it, and I'm sure Samsung will. This is not, what I can say is not just unique to Samsung, but at the same time, right, it's a very important problem for us to understand what really happened and address it, right? So the best minds in the company are working on to root cause the problem and solve it, right? So I'm sure you'll hear about it very soon. So I don't want to go into the details right now because it's too early. But I think when the next platform gets launched, I think the corrective actions in terms of analysis of the problem and putting corrective actions to ensure quality would have gone in. That is something which I can assure you from the company point of view. The second aspect you're talking about is the thermal management from a hardware point of view, or?
I'm proposing that, see, just as software crashes and users are willing to live with it,
Right.
I'm willing for a hardware crash. My TV is saying I have become too dangerous, I'm emitting too chemicals, I'm shutting down. Or, for example, my phone is becoming too hot, I'm shutting down.
Sure.
So I think that can be an acceptable hardware design paradigm that big companies can adopt,
Right.
so that we prevent catastrophic failures in the consumer market and then a recall.
Sure.
That's still a recall maybe, but it is preventive recall.
Sure, definitely. That is an additional thing what you're talking about in terms of analytics. So, I mean, something I can talk about as we are, maybe a much more closer example from a fab point of view, right? For instance, a fab is a pretty big line, right? You have a wafer fab has a lot of equipment which goes into manufacturing the end wafer and the end die, right? And it has hundreds or thousands of sensors which actually monitor on what needs to be done. So one of the big use case we are talking about is putting IoT in our fabs, right? So just to, maybe it might not get into the hardware or into the semiconductor thing, but what I'm really talking about is, so some of these incorrect usage or incorrect reading or early reading of these sensors can actually help us to prevent catastrophe in fabs. Because in fabs, you have a lot of poisonous chemicals and gases which are used, which can be catastrophic if not controlled, right? So some of these equipments, we are installing IoTs, right, which can actually prevent shutdown early, and not just that, right? It can also improve the yield, which is an additional benefit point. So there's a lot of work happening in terms of improving hardware more from a preventive point of view with use of IoT. So this is just an example which you're working on live as we are talking.
Great, thanks. Sorry. Okay, one last question, please. Could we use the mic? Could you use the mic, please?
So the question is,
Yeah, hi, Praveen here. I'm just asking, does Samsung help startup to download these SDK and build a basic prototype and all?
sure, definitely. In fact, I don't know if the workshop slots are fixed. Actually, we are going to show how the Arctic kit is set up and how to download the SDK and get started. So definitely Samsung is there to help you. But today, I think you can see a live demo of it on how to do it. And if required, you can follow up with us and we can help you out.
It's actually at 2:20 p.m. up in the Bene on 4th floor, right? Thank you, Balaji. And I would please request Anita to come on stage and give a small memento to Balaji, please.